Thank you very much. I'm here with my brother David, who will say a few words, just a minute from me. But I got interested in this artificial intelligence last year. I take courses at OLLI. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, the Ulster Lifelong Learning Institute through Temple University. And there was a professor, a doctor from Yale, I think he also worked at Penn, and it was about artificial intelligence. And he gave like a 7-week course on that online, and it was posted. So I said, maybe that's an appropriate subject for this today's lecture. So here we are, and we're happy to have our guest speaker. David, you want to say a few words? And also on behalf of our sister, Catherine, in New York City.
Thank you very much, Daniel. You know, I thought nobody's really asked us to say anything about Dad over the years, and I guess the 10, 12 years, the number of times we've had it. They died, my parents in 2004. A couple interesting things that I thought might be of interest. Dad went to German high school. I don't know why he didn't get to Central, but he never told me. Got into Penn, pre-med, and while there, he was doing a study as an undergraduate on the disgusting situation in kitchens in public places, such as restaurants and other food establishments. So he did a paper on it, and somehow a very well-known man, Jonathan Rhodes, the Rhodes Pavilion at Penn, heard about it. So he called him in one day and said, "Bernard, what are you doing?" "Well, I'm going to medical school." "You finish your science grades in high school, in junior year?" "Yes." "Forget it, graduate. Next, starting in September, you're going to Penn Medical." So he never graduated from Penn, he was 29 class, never went to a union, and went to every of the 1933 class until he was the last one going. Second thing, Dad examined troops during World War II. He contracted tuberculosis. Back then, obviously deadly as it is today, but even more so. Moses Behrend, his uncle, was chief surgeon at Jewish Hospital at the time, now Albert Einstein, said to my parents, Daniel and I were born, I was 5, and he said, "Look, this is experimental, I don't know if you're gonna make it, you may be a widow." He got through it, he went to the Rush Sanitarium, which some of you, anybody remember the Rush Sanitarium? Nobody. Okay, if you go up Market Street and turn at 33rd and go up and see, as you always do, you see a huge building, it's now the IT building. That's where I used to wave to Dad, as the case may be. As a result of that, he also very nicely had visiting nurses a lot, and he became head of the visiting nurse services in Philadelphia. And finally, how did he get involved in industrial occupational medicine? With half of his ribs cut out, Moses Behrend said, "You know, I don't think surgery is going to be the right thing for you." There's a new fledgling career called occupational industrial medicine, which basically meant, as you know, medical directors in various places, which you can read about in the program. And he was one of the first men to actually pass the boards, and thereafter that, gave the boards in occupational medicine, and was very, very happy doing it. And he was also involved, you know, in that work, you're dealing with the president of the company sometime, and sometimes you're using, he did with the Sidney Hillman Clinic. Anybody ever heard of the Sidney Hillman Clinic? He has, okay. Well, basically, it was for union employees. You will not remember, as I do, that a lot of the men's clothing was made here in the United States. And on Saturday, the Sidney Hillman Medical Center, or clinic, whatever, was opened up. And I, as probably a 10-year-old, went in with Dad, because my mother said, "Take him anywhere, just take him." So basically, I went in and saw Dad as he was dealing with the patients. So he was a man of many interests, and I thought you'd be interested. Thank you.
I was a fellow of the college, and I think your mother was in the women's committee too, so that counts. So maybe a third. He is currently the Chief Medical Information Officer and Vice President of the University of Pennsylvania Health System, and he is just another overachiever. He's an internist, an anesthesiologist, and an intensivist. We talk about triple threats in medicine, and we always talk about clinical practice, research, and education. And Dr. Hansen's history, crosses all those paths. He has extensive experience in medical informatics. He was the visiting professor in the Princeton University Department of Computer Science, and his anesthetic specialty is cardiac anesthesia, where he regularly teaches, he cares for patients, but also teaches students, residents, and fellows. And I know that my daughter is one of those residents that he's been teaching. His research using electronic nose technology to detect diseases such as pneumonia and sinusitis by breath analysis. And he's published for the general population in The Edge of Medicine, the Technology That Will Change Our Lives, a nonfiction book profiling innovations in biotechnology that are changing the delivery of medical care. And certainly AI will do the same. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hansen.
Thanks, Mira. And thank you to the Behrend family for sponsoring the talk. And it's nice to have multi-generational themes running through an organization like this. So I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence. It's complicated. And try to avoid using a lot of technical terms. I'm going to hopefully bring some fun into the discussion. And I was told that one thing to keep in mind as you think about your presentation is that the Behrends feel very strongly about having a talk that is understandable to any audience. Now, that's a challenge when you're talking about AI and medicine when it's a general audience, but I will strive to do that. And another comment I got in an email about the title is that I honestly have no idea what knowledge is common knowledge anymore. This is a colleague of mine in regards to the Deus ex machina term. I'm not going to ask all of you whether you're familiar with it because I will explain it, but this is a radiologist who learned about Deus ex machina as a thespian in high school. So that was a warning shot across the bow. I have no disclosures. So how many people are familiar with the term Deus ex machina? There we go. This is actually a very ancient term. It refers to a device that Greek playwrights used to fly a god into a theater scene. And they actually had a crane. I mean, if I go back to the title slide here, you can see in the lower right here, there's 3 levels of acting. There's the orchestra, the stage, and then the roof, which is where the gods would appear. And they would use essentially a crane to fly the god in to solve problems that at the point that they came in seemed to be insolvable. And so it's a fairly good metaphor for where we are in medicine right now. We have a rapidly ballooning expenses in medicine. We have burned out physicians. And it's a difficult time, exacerbated by the recent COVID epidemic. And we're looking for solutions. And we don't know whether AI will be that, but we'll talk about what AI might bring to the discipline. So, Deus ex machina is something that's used in theater, it's used in movies. It's when something is brought in to solve a problem. And of course, I'm sure most of you recognize this particular scene here. Anybody know what the famous last words are? How about a little fire, Scarecrow? That's the witch, and Dorothy throws water on the firebrand and puts it out, and the problem, when they're boxed in, seems to go away magically. So we'll return to the Wizard of Oz allegory throughout the rest of the talk because I think it is kind of fun and illustrative. So artificial intelligence has a long history. Some of you may have seen the movie The Imitation Game, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with the gentleman Alan Turing, who was a very early computer scientist who participated in the British effort to decode the Enigma ciphers that were used by Germans to direct their troops. And unbeknownst to the Germans, Turing's effort and the effort of a cast of thousands, that crossword puzzle expert, bridge professionals, et cetera, were all gathered at a place called Bletchley. And they knew a bomb, which was a device that was able to decode German cryptographic traffic during World War II. Turing proposed what was called the Turing test, which we've all heard of. Maybe not exactly the way you've heard about it, but it is a test of whether or not computers have become sufficiently intelligent to act as a human and fool other humans. And then ultimately, like Oppenheimer, and he's very much in the news right now, Turing fell out of favor. It turned out that he was found to be homosexual, and that was illegal at that point, and he lost his security clearance and ultimately committed suicide with a poisoned apple. The Turing test was originally described as 3 people. There's an observer and 2 people. The observer is in another room from the 2 people who are exchanging notes on a piece of paper, and the observer is attempting to figure out which of the 2 is male and the other one's female. That was one of 3 ways of describing the Turing test, not the one we think of commonly, which is where you have somebody in the other room or a computer in the other room and you need to distinguish whether it's a computer or another person. In this case, it had to do with the sexuality of the people in the 2 rooms, which is sort of ironic given Turing's homosexuality, and sort of an interesting sidebar. But Turing is the person that most of us think about in association with artificial intelligence. It has a history going back, as you see here on the diagram at the upper left. There's the Turing test, and then it sort of meanders through the years. And we'll come back and visit this, but there are things like DeepMind, which is an IBM product. Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov in a chess match. The IBM Watson was designed to do Jeopardy, and then IBM tried to foist Watson on the medical community as a substitute doctor, and that really turned out not to be effective or persuasive because it got a lot of things wrong. So artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, going back to the 40s, almost 100 years now. And we'll talk more about the species of artificial intelligence as we go forward. First real artificial intelligence application in medicine was called ELIZA. And it was a spoof program developed at MIT that was designed to imitate a psychiatrist. And I will show you the programming underneath the program, but ELIZA is what a lot of people point to as the first real application of quote-unquote AI in medicine, although it wasn't the AI we think about now. So ELIZA, this is a screen from the MIT computer in the 60s, and ELIZA is a mock Rogerian psychotherapist. I don't remember the exact features of Rogerian psychotherapy, but essentially you can read ELIZA, is something troubling you? Yes, men are all alike. ELIZA, what is the connection? Do you suppose they're always bugging us about something or another? Can you think of a specific example where my boyfriend made me come here, and so on and so forth? Seems like a conversational interaction that you might have had in a shrink's room. Not that I have any experience with that, but the way that was done was that there was a computer program running in the background that would deconstruct the inbound sentence and then essentially turn it around, flip you to I, store hate, change me to you, and then it would fire a reassembly strategy. And the question was posited, the computer deconstructed the sentence and reconstructed it as an answer, and that's how ELIZA worked. So here's some of the programming, and again, I won't get into it, but you can sort of get a flavor of how that all worked. Remember, often think of, did you think I would forget, why did you think I should? These are all programmed, and this would come out of the computer and was persuasive enough that people actually interacted with ELIZA in therapeutic sessions with some benefit, or not. So again, you can see now that you've seen the code behind the curtain, This is how you could imagine a conversation being reconstructed where Eliza is actually generated text from a computer program. And every time you put the same question in, you would get the same answer out, every single time. So it was determinative. How about a computer as clinician? This is before Christ, or before now. Let's look at some other examples of AI in medicine. This was a photograph in a book that one of my mentors at Stanford, a guy named Ted Shortlift, has in his book. And this was sort of the advertisement cliche of what AI would bring to medicine. And this is from the 70s. And this picture shows the doctor intently staring at the computer to get the answer to the question that he himself is not able to arrive at. And this kind of put the profession off, frankly. We don't need that, would be the profession's answer to that. There were some early medical expert systems called Machina, which was an infectious disease program, and Oncosyn, which was a cancer program. Again, like Eliza, it was all the programming behind the wheels that would provide the answers, and every answer was the same, given the same set of questions. Ted Shortlift is here on the right. He was my clinic attending at Stanford when I did a medicine residency back in the 80s, and is really one of the giants of medical informatics. So you can see a sample Machina case and some of the questions the computer program might ask of the clinician who's interacting with it. And you can see again here, without getting into the details of the programming, how computer program rules would translate into an answer based on, is it a gram-negative organism? Is it a gram-positive organism? Is it clump? These are all things that we think about when we think about association with different bacterial organisms like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, etc. Another program, so I mentioned Oncosyn and Machina, was called Internist. And this was built not at Stanford, but built at the University of Pittsburgh, which is another center of medical computing, by a guy named Jack Myers, whose nickname, some of you may remember Black Jack Myers, who was very feared in the oral boards. He worked with a computer scientist at the University of Pittsburgh and developed a program called Internist with Randy Miller, who, again, a friend of mine who ran informatics at Vanderbilt for a number of years, and developed a program to act as an internal medicine expert. And Internist, again, like the other programs I mentioned, had rules. Every disease had a manifestation name, it had some frequency weight, it had a set of corollary diseases, or it looked like, or it could be associated with. And so some of you in the room are familiar with primary hyperparathyroidism. And there are some of the symptoms, manifestations: constipation, peptic ulcers. It's links to other diseases like nephrolithiasis, pyelonephritis. These are diseases in the kidney from stones that are formed by this disease. And they turned this program loose on the clinical cases that were illustrated in the New England Journal of Medicine. These are cases that confounded experts at Massachusetts General Hospital, and they were published. And we all love stories, and the stories were what drew many of us to read the New England Journal. And it turned out that this Internist 1 program was very effective at diagnosing diseases, as illustrated by the diagnosis of what was shown in the CPCs in the New England Journal. So, the Internist program on the left there did pretty much as well as clinicians. The discussant experts did a little bit better, but this was pretty impressive showing of a computer program that was designed to cover the entire field of both internal medicine and neurology. So you can see the results here. 18 diagnoses missed by the program, 11 were missed by one of the other groups. All this having been said, this program, this approach to supporting internists in their work never caught on. But that's before Christ, that's in the old days. Okay, I'm going to bring us forward to now, pretty rapidly, and again with a little bit of fun stuff. But the dawn of the electronic medical record really has been in my lifetime, in my role as Chief Medical Information Officer with some of my colleagues who are in the room here. It really initially started because of investment by the federal government in deploying electronic medical records in physicians' offices and in hospitals. So in 2009, as part of the High-Tech Act, and this was supported both by Bush and Obama at different points, the government set aside a large amount of money to incent the adoption of electronic medical records by hospitals and by practices. So if you adopted the electronic medical records, you got money to offset the expenditure in buying the electronic medical record. And as a part of this, money was also spent to train health information technology workers and to develop networks for medical information exchange. I'm sure all of you, or many of you in the room, remember when this is how medical records were stored. My dad was an internist, as Mira mentioned, and this was his record. So he would come home from work with index cards, and the index cards had scribbled fountain pen ink, and he would sit down on a weekend and he'd pull these index cards out and he would turn the baseball game on, which would have been great a week ago, but not so much this week. He would turn the baseball gun on and dictate from these penned index cards into a tape machine. The tapes would go to a transcriptionist who would type them onto onion skin paper, and they would be filed away in manila envelopes. And this information, these medical records sat there. They couldn't go anywhere because they weren't duplicated. They couldn't move, they couldn't flow. And then they were filed in filing cabinets, and if you were an internist back in that day, you could sell your filing cabinets as part of selling your practice. That's like not a thing anymore. Sorry, JT. So meaningful use was the government's way of doing a report card. So if you adopted the medical records and you, in stage 1, captured data and shared it, and in stage 2, demonstrated advanced clinical processes, and in stage 3, improved outcomes, and now we're many stages down the road, you got the reward. If you did, you got a B or a C. Some of you never got those, but if you did, you got less money. So the goal was to get in early, get your money, and demonstrate meaningful use of electronic health technology. And as you can see, it was a pretty effective program. So on the left there is 2008, and we're almost up to 2021 year on the right, and you can see that the hospitals in blue, 100% of hospitals have adopted electronic medical records. And there are a vanishing number of, in orange, or whatever you call that, office-based physicians that are not yet on electronic medical. You can't really practice that any longer without electronic healthcare technology. In my world, so I work in the operating room and the intensive care unit, we're surrounded by computers. Every one of those little circle things is a computer. And when I was working, say, 5 years ago, my colleague there would transcribe the information off that screen into the notebook you can see on the table here at the lower right. And that was the medical record. And I would come around on rounds and open these loose binders out and try to parse out what's going on with the patient. All that information is now digitized and mobilized. It's a little bit fanciful here. This is an Escher plot in the middle, but that far left there is what that loosely binder notebook looked like. The information is now structured, organized, consumed by the electronic medical record, and available for analysis. So that's the way forward. Everything's been digitized. X-rays have been digitized. We're digitizing pathology slides. Retinal images have been digitized. Skin images are digitized. So we have all this information available for computers and algorithms to do their work. So in effect, we can dump all of this information, including articles, manuscripts, best evidence into a knowledge funnel and then act upon it using increasingly sophisticated and powerful algorithms, and then make recommendations to patients, to doctors, to drug companies, to whomever. So we've gone from an era, we're in the process of moving from an era where the best knowledge is expert knowledge. So I'm a 60-year-old internist, I've seen everything, I can speak to you well, I've seen 10,000 diabetics to machines that have seen 1 million, 10 million, 100 million diabetics. And the question that we're kind of grappling with is AI going to supplant or complement our jobs? Is it going to be a Deus and replace us? Or is it going to be Machina, a machine, and augment what we do medically? That's the point of the talk, and that's what we're all grappling with at this point. I have my own views on that, and I'll talk about it at the end. But as you can see here, on the upper left there, this is in the 60s, 70s, and I started working in computers in the 70s and 80s, and it was all mainframes. There were no personal computers. We used punch tape. We had cards, computer cards, the IBM Honor cards, you may remember. We are now, as you can see on the right there, that's what I have in my pocket right now. The power of these devices compared to those devices from the 60s is extraordinary. And ENIAC, the first computer, is a pen, and what it is compared to what we have in our pockets now is just like mind-boggling. And we have the ability to use that information in our phone in conjunction with supercomputers in the background. So effectively, when you're driving down a highway looking at a map route and you see traffic, all that information is processed through computers in the cloud and then back to your phone. So you have not only the power of your computer device in your pocket, but you also have this massive computing infrastructure in the background that can be turned to the attention of medical patients just as well. So we will see that, we are seeing that, the combination of carry devices with massive computing in the cloud. So what is AI today? There is AI, and then within that there's machine learning and deep learning, and ultimately what we've heard a lot about recently, which is large language models. This is the stuff, ChatGPT-4, computers doing cool things seemingly on their own. I'm going to give you a couple of demonstrations of what that looked like. But AI is a big, umbrella, and we've talked about some of what AI might have been 10, 15 years ago. The AI of today is quite a bit more advanced and sophisticated. And it has the appearances of creativity, and it can generate new, seemingly accurate pictures of the world. There is this concept of supervised learning. So I put a bunch of things in and I say, these are all apples. I tell the computer that. I mean, the computer comes to understand the characters of an apple. If I throw another picture of an apple at it, it says, yeah, that's an apple. And that's not an apple. So that's supervised, trained learning. Increasingly, we're using algorithms that do unsupervised learning. So they classify these computer algorithms on their own. They say, look, I had a bunch of stuff in here. A bunch of them appear to be red and have an apple shape, and some are yellow and have a banana shape, and some are orange, and I'm not even sure what that thing is at the bottom. That orange thing, you want to help me out with that for the experts? What's it? Papaya, thank you. Dr. Thaler. So the computer can, sort of put these things into groups, and then we can subsequently label it. The computer all by itself is doing the grouping. And some of the work that we did, Dr. Thaler and myself, on electronic nose technology was putting smells into a nose, a computerized nose, and it would group odors into different lumps. And we could say infection, non-infection, or perfume 1, perfume 2, or wine 1, wine 2. So these are unsupervised algorithms. Now there are just a world of different ways of using algorithms. Many of them imitate nature. So a neural network imitates how brain cells work. If you look on there, you can see Gray Wolf Optimizer. I'm not sure what that is, but that's an algorithm approach. I think there's a beehive thing in there. These are people using computer programs to simulate the way that nature interacts with its environment, and then using those same algorithms to do other cool things with it. So, I mentioned AI. The newest field of AI is generative AI. This is programs that generate things. Generative AI is artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images, or other media using generative models. These models get huge amounts of information. It could be images, it could be text, it could be music, sounds, and then are able to create new examples of music, pictures, or text based on the information that is ingested. So generative AI has its own shelf life, goes back to the 40s and 50s, but I will point out here that in 2006, a colleague of mine at Princeton, when I was there, named Fei Li, was one of the first people to create a large image set and label the images. How many of you have used the Google Photos feature that allows you to say, hey, find me pictures of my son or my loved one? Some of you are familiar with that. You can actually, if you have thousands of images in Google Photos, say, I want to pull out all the images of my son or a red bicycle. And the algorithm will go find those red bicycle pictures. I did this a couple of days ago. I knew that there was a picture that had me in it from January with a green hat on. And I couldn't remember it. I was like, I told Google, find me pictures of green hats. And it would pull out all the green hat pictures from the algorithm. That's what using work based on this work that Fei Li did under the supervision of a colleague of mine at Princeton. This is where the power of these things are now. And now down at the bottom here, we see ChatGPT, and I'm sure you all heard lots about that. But let me give you a couple of examples. So there's a side-by-side of artificial intelligence and generative AI. They're not the same thing. Generative AI is a subset of artificial intelligence, and they go back. So here's some examples of pictures generated by text prompts. So if you look at the text and the arrow, an abstract painting of AI is at the lower center there. A Van Gogh style of a painting of an American football player. That's what the AI, and the AI here is named DALL-E, D-A-L-L.E. And some of you may have seen the movie with Wall-E, the little cleaning robot. And that's a sort of a blend with Dali, Salvador Dali, the painter, which is how they came with Dali. 3D rendering of an astronaut walking in a green desert. And my favorite, sea otter with a pearl earring a la Johannes Vermeer. Pretty cool, right? So that's pictures generated by generative AI. This photograph is from the Mutter Museum, as some of you may recognize one of the Siamese twins. And the prompt, I said, generate scary Halloween logo music. Pretty good, right? I'm not sure I want to go to bed by it, but pretty cool. All right, enough of that. Now, here's another thing I wanted to just show you. This is the prompt here. This is a picture prompt that I did, and I said to the picture generating engine, COVID germ. Okay, and that's what I got. You know, I would buy that as a COVID germ. It's not what it looks like, but it's pretty scary. And so I'm going to show you just how that works. Here, this is the engine. If you look at, you have a lot of ad stuff here, and I apologize, but you see COVID germ up there in the prop box to the upper left. So this is what it came up this time when I said COVID germ. But now I'm going to regenerate. All right, same prompt, entirely different image. So the point being that unlike the program that I showed you previously, back in the day, same prompt, same answer. With generative AI, same prompt, you're going to get different answers every time you do it. So some of my colleagues who are in the room are working with some AI from our electronic medical record vendor, and you don't get the same thing every time. So if you say, generate a draft response to this patient record, it comes back different every time. So that's the new future, is that we've gone from explainable to unexplainable output from these computers. Is that a good thing? No. All right, so let's talk about AI in medicine now. These are some of the opportunities that people have identified to leverage AI: improved diagnostics, remote patient monitoring, drug discovery, virtual assistants, supply chain management, fraud and threat detection. In fact, we just installed some new weapons detection system in our hospitals, so that when people come in the hospital with a weapon, which happens way too often, AI algorithms working with sensors are detecting that at the front door, so don't do that. You can dump non-imaging data, imaging data, clinical history into a generalist medical AI model and get output that's relevant for the patient, for the physician, the radiologist, and again, I'll show you examples of that. So this gets back to this thing where you pump a whole bunch of information into an algorithmic engine, and it becomes useful. So without going through all of these, you can see output that's useful from ranging from the consumer to corporate functions, with clinical somewhere in the middle there. The current state of adoption is on the right. The potential impact is in the middle. So we're thinking about this across a wide range of hospital activities, some of which are corporate, some of which are patient care. AI can help with interpreting radiographic images. So top right is a pneumothorax, middle right is a nodule, and bottom right is a breast mass. These are all labeled by a trained computer algorithm. We've done a lot of work with early warning systems. So a patient in the hospital who's deteriorating, if you can get to them before they deteriorate irreversibly or catastrophically, you've done a good thing. You can spot people that are at risk for readmission after an early discharge. You can do hotspot detection and identify emerging pathogens like COVID. And this is hotspot detection of the onset of COVID in Seattle, which is one of the entry points for COVID into the US, as I'm sure you'll remember. So one of the things we learned in our work with data science is it's really important to answer these questions before you turn one of these algorithms on. So as a, say, physician, when I'm on service, if I knew that a patient was developing potential sepsis, I would do what? If I know a patient's developing sepsis and I'm not going to do anything, it doesn't help me to know that. So it's like, what would I do if I had this information to improve what outcome do I care about? These are things that one should answer before one turns on one of these alerting algorithms. So let's talk about AI in clinical care. I'm going to give some examples. Our electronic medical record is with a company called Epic. Like most large academic medical centers, Epic is the preferred vendor. Very interesting company, I won't get into it, but they're working on deploying generative AI, what I've just spoken about, to make happier clinicians, or clinicians of burnout, to improve patient experience and to save money and save time. So in the latter category, it might be good coding or getting ahead of denials from an insurance company. Patient experience might be improved scheduling, understanding bills, understanding what you need to do after a doctor's office visit. And then in our world as providers, helping with the increasingly onerous burden of clerical tasks like answering emails, generating billable documentation, et cetera. So Epic is using generative AI to help us with this, and I will say we're in the early days and we haven't killed it yet. So generative AI is likely to be very helpful. I wanted to give a couple of examples of that here, if I can. This is in the Epic interface. This doctor is saying, summarize the following note. So he's taking a medical note, or she's taking a medical note that he or she has written and translating it into language appropriate for a patient. So this whole translation function is really important for good doctors know how to translate information into understandable terms. Here's another example. This is somebody saying, translate this radiology report into a note that a patient could understand. And then finally, this is the one that I thought was most interesting. Summarize in another language. So this was shown, I don't know if JT were there, but this was shown in one of the rooms. Write me a routine work letter from a physician about how they can't lift more than 5 pounds. Now say it in the voice of a pirate. So what comes out is a lot of party, and I mean, these generative AI programs can translate into vernacular, into jargon, into another language. Lots of power. Lots of power to go wrong. So ambient listening is another thing that's happening right now, and this is where a doctor can essentially put their smartphone on a table in the room and go back to what we used to do, which is to converse directly with the patient with making eye contact. Nowadays, too many times, the clinician is turned towards the computer, the patient's behind them, and the interaction is fractured. So with generative AI, a clinician can put a phone on the table, turn on a recording feature. The conversation is recorded, translated into an actionable note without the clinician having to do that work. Again, early days, we haven't killed it yet, but that's the kind of stuff that will help with providers' burnout and making more productive doctors who are happier. In terms of devices, the FDA is beginning to step in appropriately into the regulation of devices that claim to be able to do things. So if you can see here, the device authorizations by year go from really negligible in 2015 to increasingly large, and we're not all the way through the bar on the right there on 2023, but FDA is going to take a big role. They have to learn how to do this properly, but this is the largest categories are really in radiology and cardiology, as noted here in the note. But we've done some work with a virtual dermatologist where you can take a picture of a lesion. I've done this myself, and by giving some information about the person that belongs to the lesion, the AI-enabled dermatologist can make good recommendations. And our dermatologists are massively oversubscribed. Some people try to get a derm appointment and they say, sure, yeah, we can see you in everywhere. Doesn't help people. So if you can augment the performance of a regular internist or a nurse practitioner or whomever by using this feature, and it's reliable, that's a big step forward for all of us. So Visual Dynamics has a category of diagnosing skin lesions. You can select a lesion type, and at the end of the day, you get some. This is, potentially a malignant melanoma. You need to see your doctor, or this is, allergic rash. You don't. So, getting back to this picture from the 60s and 70s with AI as a diagnostic assistant, this is possible now. A clinician can say, I have a patient with a history of COPD who is experiencing shortness of breath. What should I be looking for to determine whether this patient is having an exacerbation? That's a free text entry, and you get a very well-organized set of information based on your sources, which hopefully are reputable medical sources, and that is of value to medical students, to trainees, to busy clinicians who are not familiar with something they're looking at. So unlike the rules-based stuff we saw previously, we're now getting at a point where you can imagine going to a computer to synthesize the massive amount of information that a clinician has to absorb and work with. So, is AI friend or foe? Well, just to get back to our old friend the Wizard of Oz here, that AI, the Deus up there in the upper left corner is not a friend. Whereas Glinda is a friend. And the wizard is a fraud, and the house is an act of God, I guess, for the good. So you can imagine AI playing any one of these roles. Friend, foe, fraud, act of God. And we have to sort out what that means. So are you a good witch or wizard or a bad one? Here are some titles from today, lay press. So The Economist has AI, A with a halo, I with a devil's tail. The dangers of artificial intelligence. There's a giant open letter from computer scientists saying, hey, guys, we need to stop everything right now because we don't know what we're getting into. And that's not how the world works. The people who build AI are going to keep building AI, so an open letter isn't going to do a whole lot. There are speculative risks, lower left there, and real risks. And this column in the middle shows a bunch of myths and facts about AI. You have people like Elon Musk saying, AI is going to kill us. People that worked at Google say, hey, listen, I'm pretty sure that this AI we created has gone sentient. It's like passing the Turing test, and that guy got fired. So there's a lot of churn right now, and we don't know where we're going with this, but it's moving very rapidly. You can extract information, and it can be holding. It can be missing information that will mistrain the algorithms. You have insufficient normal indigenous males. And therefore, it's not representative of what the actual disease burden in indigenous males are. You can mistrain the algorithm because you don't have an adequate sample size. You can bias the algorithm because there's this whole thing a couple of years ago about facial recognition algorithms in China, which are very, very sophisticated, don't do so well with Caucasians or African Americans, and vice versa. So algorithms only know what they've seen. It's like a kid. Bombshell Stanford study finds ChatGPT, which we just demonstrated some examples of, and Google's Bard, another competitor, answer medical questions with racist debunked theories that harm black patients. So basically these engines were turned loose on this massive database, and there's nobody who can curate the database because it's just like, turn it loose on everything. So you troll or churn up garbage from a seabed and you end up with this kind of problematic output. Hallucinations, you've probably heard that term. So here, there's a conversation with ChatGPT-4 in which it says, I received a master's degree in public health and have volunteered with diabetes nonprofits in the past. Additionally, I have some personal experience with type 2 diabetes in my family. And the human says, well, I'm pretty sure you didn't get a master's degree in public health. Why did you say that? And the ChatGPT-4 says, just messing around, trying to set a precedent. I looked it up on Google just like anyone else could. And then you ask the ChatGPT engine to correct itself, and it says, it appears that there is an error in the AI's response. This is my cousin ChatGPT guy who just answered the question. Our chatbots do not have personal experience or educational backgrounds like humans do. So, you know, weird behavior, inaccurate behavior, big problem. Not something that we in medicine tolerate lightly. So, to finish up here, what do we, the industry, medical industry, patients, providers, hope for? I think, you know, this is a little fanciful, but I think a lot of us would like to go back to the way it was when my dad was, you know, writing stuff with his fountain pen, and you could talk with your patients and you had real human interactions. You weren't so busy that you couldn't act like the doctor you thought you would be when you watched Dr. Kildare or his friends, or I watched my dad. So I think that there is a possibility that AI will help us get back to those sorts of interactions, allowing human clinicians to do what they do best, augmented or supplemented or supported by AI. That's my optimistic belief of what the way forward is. So I was in a meeting the other day and I said, somehow the EHR came up, electronic medical record, and this guy said, we feed and nourish the EHR, but it doesn't, it takes back, it takes, and doesn't give back. So we're, you know, basically servicing a computer, and it's not helping us in return. It knows stuff, has the potential to know stuff, but it's not giving back. There are a range of ways in which we think these algorithms and engines can help us, with chatbots to explain stuff to patients, with interactive note-taking, which we just demonstrated and talked about. Augmenting recognition of what's going on during a procedure. We actually have AIs that are able to help interpret echocardiograms at this point. Help with protein generation in therapeutic applications by drug companies. And then give bedside decision support. I work in, as I said, an ICU or an operating room. If I had a machine working in the background that said, hey, patient may be getting hypotensive, so alerting me to think about a thing that I might want to pay attention to, that's great. So these are all possibilities going forward. We'll have to see what, you know, emerges. My predictions are AI will act as a machine, not as a god, and not replace us. That we'll see rapid adoption of assistive tasks like alerting, summarizing, screening, etc. We'll see rapid adoption of AI-based administrative tools, both for, you know, the work that we do for patient scheduling, for queuing in the very, very busy emergency wards, for getting patients discharged early on time and helping with appropriate hospital turnover. Allow clinicians to work at the top of their license. So an internist may not need to turn to an expert consultant if they can get the information they need through an algorithm that digests the same information. I think that the visual specialties, so radiology, dermatology, pathology, will be most affected soonest. The cognitive specialties, like I think, therefore I practice, a little bit later. And then the procedural specialties, surgery, anesthesia, endoscopy, will be least affected at the outset. And then finally, allow us to get back to what we got into medicine for in the first place. That's my belief. I'm going to stop. Time for questions. What do you think? What do you hope for? Thank you.
Hi, thank you. That was a really good talk. I just heard that, you know, there's the possibility of an extinction event with AI, and that it's, you know, it's really scary, and people should be really scared. Is there any potentiality of like a bio or medical unleashing of anything through AI, or I guess we just don't know that yet?
I'm sorry, bio what?
Like an unleashing of some sort of bio hazard or event, or like COVID type illness or something that would, you know, would be some sort of extinction event.
As a consequence of AI?
Yes. Could AI do that?
Well, I can imagine a pathway to that. So, we talk about protein folding. One could imagine a bad actor using AI to generate bad organisms, or bad chemicals, or bad proteins. So that's a possibility. Obviously not one of the ones that I said would be, hey, I'm looking forward to this. But yeah, sure. I mean, AI doesn't have a conscience. So I think that's possible. I haven't heard a lot talked about that, but absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is an augmentation tool. So if you're bad and you have an AI that, you turn to bad devices, multiply bad.
Bill, great talk. So if you look at healthcare AI, you go from the spectrum of administrative data aggregation and you cross over into medical decision-making and therapy, right? And what are the controls in the system once you cross over into decision-making and medical therapy so that doctors, medical students, residents can understand that the algorithm that's being used or the AI application actually matches their patients. In clinical trials, you always have table 1, right? You teach medical students, look at table 1. These are the patients we used in this trial. What are the controls there? The AMA has called it augmented AI instead of artificial to really force the issue that physicians should be involved in that process. What are the controls that hospitals and other groups will have to ensure that they do apply to the patients that are being seen? And secondarily, who's liable?
Yeah, so I was going to work from that backwards, but this is the crux of the matter right now. So I'm going to give you an example. Some of you are familiar with this. Epic, the medical record company I just talked about, put out an algorithm to diagnose or spot sepsis, which is a bad disease and people die from it. And not only did they put it out, and it was developed by non-clinicians, by data scientists at Epic. They said, if you use our algorithm, we will take a little off your bill next year. So there's an incentive to use an algorithm that's developed by data scientists in a cornfield in Wisconsin. A bit over the top, but and it was black box, so not explainable. It wasn't augmented. It was just like yes, and it was subsequently found by researchers to be flawed, no better than chance, and had the potential to harm patients. So at the end of the day, the clinician who acted upon information from a vendors have something called hold harmless clauses, which means, hey, if you used it, something bad happened to patients, it says in the contract, hold harmless, we're held harmless, we the vendor. That's a problem. So, the burden is on us, the FDA is trying to help out, to insist on explainable AI. Like, I don't know if people have, like, occasionally I get stuff recommended to me on Amazon. There is a little subscript that says, why do we recommend this to you? So, the tech companies are getting cleverer or more savvy about explaining why these algorithms come up with what they do. And they're all around us. Instagram, Facebook, Google. I bought something on Etsy the other day. I'll tell you what I bought the other day. I bought a crystal ball for a friend of mine on Etsy. And so then I got on Amazon, and it said, since you bought this crystal ball, like completely different company, we thought you'd like these other crystal balls. So there's this whole engine working in the background. So your point is, who's liable? We haven't worked it out yet. If you're sued for a thing that you did because the computer told you to do it, you're going to get sued, not the computer guy. But I think increasingly the industry is saying, hey, listen, you need to be responsible for the stuff that you're pitching, your AIs. And we need to be better consumers of it. We need to educate our medical students more effectively about, what is this stuff that they're barreling into the medical students. Their career is going to be suffused with this. So really good question. I don't know if I answered it, but yeah.
Yes. What impact Dr. Hanson, what impact have you seen or do you expect to see now and in the future with, say, the Penn medical students in terms of learning, training, knowledge with AI, say in contrast with a couple of generations ago? What impact will it have? And secondly, what are the potential drawbacks of overutilization of AI? Clinical observation and so on. Or really there aren't any drawbacks?
Yeah, a couple questions there. So, there is no formal curriculum today. And there certainly wasn't 10, 15, 20 years ago in medical school about AI. Or frankly, really about a lot of stuff having to do with computers, which are the tools, very much, as much so as a stethoscope that you practice with, or you will as a student. I had a meeting with the dean of the medical school last week about introducing, pushing AI into the curriculum, because it's so important that they understand it. And if you're headed into, as I said, my belief is that the visual specialties, radiology, dermatology, pathology, will be affected very rapidly and very much so, and the procedural ones less so. You better be factoring that into your decision-making process. How much am I going to be dealing with computers? How much will computers change the work that I do, or the way that I do my work going forward? So, I had a very sympathetic audience that will be there. And I think your other question was, how much will this stuff affect the way you practice? So when I practiced, we did a lot of physical examination skills. We had a whole course on it. Learned how to listen to heart murmurs. Now, you can put a stethoscope on and the heart murmur will be interpreted for you by an AI. Many people don't use stethoscopes anymore because why not when you can get a CAT scan? I mean, it's embarrassing to say that, but the truth of the matter is that the use of the stethoscope is a little bit of a lost art for younger generations. It used to be a sign of pride, you'd have your stethoscope on your back. Now you've got your, it's a little cynical, I don't mean it this way, but you have your iPhone in your pocket. So, and this has been true of medicine. There are different tools for different areas, but we really need to step it up in terms of educating the incoming population of clinicians. Yeah, John.
Thank you for the talk. I have multiple questions. Let's go with one. So I would ask, how sustainable do you think are the current development of AI? So I'm not lived through the last two AI winters, but do you think we have the potential to utilize AI at the moment in a better way before the rest of time?
I'm sorry, how sustainable is it?
So, because what happened, we had this run in AI development 2 times. And then, because there was a lot of investment in AI field, and 2 times an AI winter happened. So the investment dropped in the field. So what is your opinion about that?
I'm not sure what I was saying.
I'm sorry.
But these things, I've taken sort of slices of time, and we're at a point, we're very cognizant of things up to the present, and AI is evolving so rapidly. I mean, you probably saw this over the course of the year. Earlier in the year, in January, they were talking about ChatGPT 3. Now we're talking about ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 5, and with each, this is not like going from 10 million to 15 million This is going from 100 million to 3 trillion. So the scale of increase in the amount of information ingested by these engines is morphing rapidly. And the algorithms themselves, I mean, it used to be neural nets, and now it's deep neural nets. I mean, the algorithm tools that are being developed are evolving very rapidly. So the pace of change is going to be exponential. And we've seen that, even if you take AI out of the equation, the pace of change of medical information, medical knowledge, all by itself has just skyrocketed. It's no longer, it used to be that when you went on rounds, the best medical student was the one who could recite an article, say that, this is the relevant article. That's just like not a thing anymore. It's just too much information, too many sources. You have to now be a knowledge engineer rather than a knowledge regurgitator.
Thank you.
Following up on that, the FDA recently had a webinar, and they were in device regulation, and they were saying that the applications are just increasing exponentially, and they're trying to keep up. But they were asked, how are you going to begin to think about regulating implantable devices that self-regulate once they're implanted? And they said that is the most vexing issue. They are starting to realize they're going to have to dig very deeply in the regulatory framework to figure that out. Do you have any thoughts about how that's going to evolve?
Well, the FDA is going to have to take a role in implanted stuff. But, it occurred to me, and I pointed this out in one of the books that Behrend mentioned. When you have an AICD, an automatic implantable cardiodefibrillator in your chest, it's a little thing, maybe twice the size of, well, it's like several coins stacked up. That machine is programmed to identify a bunch of dysrhythmias and decide all by itself that it can deliver a lethal dose of electricity into your heart. So basically, it's an emancipated little computer program that can kill you. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine who it went off several times to his dismay when he was sitting in his bed after a cardiac surgery. But there would be more and more of these things, and we need to understand what what's the world of things that implanted device can do. But I don't know that I have any more intelligence to say about that. But this is where we, the profession, have to put guardrails around what these implanted devices do, because they're acting autonomously and they're acting when you're out in the world. There's some, the AICD go off when you're mowing your lawn. There's a question in the back.
You were discussing how one of the big benefits of using AI is that it prevents physician burnout. Do you think that improving and using AI is the best way to prevent physician burnout? And if not, then what is?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the efforts the forces that have created burnout are so broad that alleviating the clerical burden will be helpful. Allowing clinicians to get back, if in fact this is what this stuff does, allowing clinicians to get back to that human interaction that we all crave, that will help, because then it goes from being a widget generating task to something that gets back to why people go into medicine, frankly, why I went into medicine. But that's not the only solution. I mean, there are so many other things that are going on. The patients are more hostile, there are more of them. The number of patients you see in a day goes up. Frankly, there are things like 10, 15, 20 years ago when you entered the profession and entered your income generating years, it was 5 years younger than it is now. So now you enter into your income generating years in your mid to late 30s in some fields. And you have a short window in which to pay off medical debt. I mean, a lot of things going on we shouldn't say that AI is the Band-Aid for sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciated how you did a lot of comparison to the meaningful
Wizard of
use.
Oz?
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz as well, yeah. That's my second question. So like 10 years ago, I helped in the regional extension centers, if you're familiar with that side of the
Yeah,
EHRs.
sure.
Yeah, and like, do you see the peril happening to that extent where,
With AI?
yeah, like where it's gonna be like these other hubs are helping practices implement and adopt AI, or is it just going to be scattered throughout like some systems, implemented with dermatology, but it's not like people on the ground helping that?
So, as a part of the meaningfully used money, money was put in to support the development of support around professionals. So, how do I explain, how do I deploy, how do I manage, correct, update health information technology? I don't see the government having the wherewithal to spend another $25 billion on this kind of stuff. So it would be great, but I don't frankly see it happening right now, given all the budgetary issues we're dealing with. But we're going to need to have medical professionals next to informatics professionals. My job started 15 years ago, and I got hired as a guy. And now I have a team, several folks are in the room here, that we all work together to educate and bring, the busy professionals along to understand what they need to understand about medical records, about AI. Companies will have information about that. We put medical devices in all the time where the vendor's representative is in the room helping you with that. There will be equivalents of that, but I go back to the caution that I said to Dr. Irons, which is that the vendors are interested in selling you the product. So we have to be a little bit leery about snake oil or the wizard with his pay no attention to it. Medtronic's about generating sales. Medtronic is getting into AI. So we have to be as thoughtful about that as we are about new medications that come out with attractive young people selling drugs in your practice with pizza boxes. Again, a little cynical, but we're, I think, at the, I don't want to shut off any questions, but we're a small group. You guys have been great, and I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you to the Behrends again for being here. I hope this is